You're most welcome back to Matchbook's Weekend Football Podcast. We did a podcast last week. It was pretty immaterial. Mark O'Hare, you had a couple of winners in Europe, so the show went on there, but obviously a hell of a lot of postponements in the UK last weekend, which made our content pretty obsolete. We'll try again this week. A slimmed down Premier League slate. Miguel, Delaney, Adrian Clarke, and Mark O'Hare are back on board after a tricky Champions League week, guys. A couple of winners, a couple of losers. Where are we going to go? That's the joys of it. As ever, we're going to cover 4 Premier League games. We're going to look at a couple of selections in the EFL and also, of course, in Europe. And we'll kick things off. We'll get right to it. Sunday noon kickoff. Brentford against Arsenal. Top of the table, Arsenal. You can back them at 1.86. Brentford at 4.5. The draw available at 4.0. Brentford getting 3/4 of a goal start on the Asian handicap line at 1.82, and 2 3/4 is the total, and slightly shaded towards the over at 1.84. Miguel, Delaney, I'd argue this is the game of the weekend. It feels like a while since we've seen Arsenal. Obviously, they've been in the Europa League, but on the back of that 3-1 loss at Old Trafford, are you expecting a bit of a bounce back here for the Gunners, or what way do you see this playing out?
I think so, but even that's kind of an interesting angle in itself, in that it probably would have been better for Arsenal to play more quickly after the reality check that the United game was, given all the commentary about it, and probably would have added a bit of an edge to their performance. Also, given what we discussed last week for games that never happened, Everton maybe would have been better opponents for that, because I think they would have. It certainly would have been a more a conservative performance, giving all the initiative to Arsenal. This is a different sort of challenge, given Brentford really go for you, which I think indicates that this is going to be quite an open game, quite erratic. Arsenal, while alternatively looking solid, have had kind of have also been susceptible as well. It's been quite, and that's actually something the United game showed as much as anything, in that we had spells when they looked kind of really rock hard, Arsenal, and then suddenly when they were opened up, which I suppose is an indication itself of a developing side. And it's why, for my bet, although I'd probably go for Arsenal to win, I think it is safer almost both teams to score, because I think Brentford will give them trouble, but Arsenal, of course, at the moment, they do look potent. Even in that United game, they still look potent.
They very much did, and like you said, they're playing that high line in the second half, and they got exposed. Mark O'Hare, flesh that out a small bit more, the both teams to score angle. It's currently available at 1.7 at Matchbook. That's pretty much our limit in terms of the lowest price, but you feel like that's a good selection and a value play?
Yeah, well, over 2.5 goals is just literally 1.71. So there's very little difference, if anything. And if you're backing over 2.5 goals, then why wouldn't you be backing both teams to score? Because I don't anticipate Arsenal running out 3-0 winners in this match. Brentford have been tremendous fun to follow this season. The 5-2 against Leeds at the community stadium was pretty exhilarating stuff. There was almost 4 non-penalty expected goals scored, 31 shots. 14 shots on target, and Leeds actually generated a higher XG in that match. Surprisingly, I know game state would have played a part there, but since they've thrashed Man United, their matches have been really, really wild. Really, they've allowed 6.51 XG and 61 shots in 4 games against Leeds, Palace, Everton, and Fulham. So hardly the toughest of Premier League schedules. Now they're playing an Arsenal team, but going forward, they've actually generated over 7 non-penalty expected goals in that same sample. Ivan Toney's just got his England call up. Capping off what's been a fantastic start to the season, and matches, as I say, have been pretty wild in terms of Brentford terms. And you're right, I think they will go for Arsenal. Very different Arsenal team to the one that crumbled here last season at the beginning of the campaign, but an Arsenal team who still, I think, give opportunities away from the Emirates. Thomas Partey could come back into the team here, which would be a big plus. But clean sheets wise, they've recorded a clean sheet at Bournemouth. That's not saying too much considering what the Cherries are doing, and away at Palace on match day 1. But I think they really could and possibly should have conceded in that match too. So I think Brentford will play offensively here. They've scored in 16 of 22 home games since the start of last season. BTTS has been overs have been the right selection in 59% of Arsenal's away days going back to the beginning of last season. And just on Brentford, this season 5 of 6 BTTS winners, 4 of 6 over 2.5 goals games as well. I just fancy them to give Arsenal a bit of a game here. Gunners fair favourites, odds on, fair enough. They were 1.85 at Palace on match day 1. Don't really disagree with those prices, but I wouldn't be backing Arsenal at the prices. Instead, I'd look towards the goals markets, and BTS just offered a little bit more value than just a plain over 2.5 goals for me.
Adrian Clarke, just on Ivan Toney, You did call for that a few weeks ago, didn't you? The England call-up. But in terms of a bet here, I think you're being a bit of a yin to the guy's yang in the sense that you're not expecting it to be as open. You're liking the look of under 3 goals.
It's more of a hunch, really, than anything. The stats clearly from this season would point towards goals. It has been wild. Brentford have been very, very dangerous. They've, the average goals per 90, I think they've doubled it at this stage compared to their season average from last year. So everything points towards Brentford giving Arsenal problems. We know that Arsenal are an attacking team that are more than likely to score in the game as well. So I get the whole BTTS thing. Absolutely. I just think Brentford have had a while without a game to sit on that and to stew. And it was a great performance, but they've just sat around really waiting for this one. Will that impact them? You can overthink it. They got Arsenal coming up. I think that Arsenal have had a game, albeit a mix and match side out there in Zurich, but they've kept in tune with that. And I just think that Arsenal was so stung by what happened at Brentford on the opening night last season that they will go there with the utmost respect for Thomas Frank's team. And I think I can see them being far more ready than they were this time last year for that challenge. And they know there are no surprises with Brentford now. And I think Arsenal I'd like to think they'll be in a position where they can have a plan to nullify it. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if both teams scored, but I still think it could go under 3 goals. I think a 1-1 draw would actually, if you had to ask me to pick a most likely scoreline, I'd probably go with 1 apiece actually in this game. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Looking at last season, Brentford kept things very tight. They went, they still had that kind of positive mentality, but they narrowly lost against Manchester City and to Chelsea. They drew 0-0 with Spurs. All of the games, apart from Arsenal and City, actually. No, it wasn't City. City battered them, didn't they? I think last year, but I'm getting in a slight muddle. But in terms of the matches at home to top half teams last season, Brentford, they were very low scoring affairs by and large, and I can see that coming around again this time around. So yeah, I think these are 2 good teams going head to head, and I think it'll be tight. Arsenal might nick it, Brentford could nick it, but yeah, I'd probably say a low scoring draw.
Yeah, look, I think there's obviously precedent too. Obviously, I think there's going to be some rustiness with some teams because we're used to this. Almost feels like an international break after last weekend. But there are some teams, Miguel, Delaney, even next week. Obviously, we do have an actual international break who aren't playing this weekend. That's going to be very tricky, isn't it, for a few teams that 3 or 4 weeks off?
Yeah, so I did a piece in this Independent this week, and so we have got 6 Premier League clubs. So what's that? 40% of the division almost, well, 30% say. That are going to go a month without playing. That's actually remarkable, really, for a 9-month season.
It's kind of like the World Cup. This is it's remarkable in the world's elite competition, and that in a season that has the World Cup in it for 6 teams to be going so long without playing. Now, obviously, questions can be raised there about some of the decision making, and it should be stressed actually that one of them this weekend, which is Brighton Palace, was already off because of a train strike. Well, that train strike is now called off as a result of kind of the Queen's funeral. Now, that in itself could have kind of unexpected effects or unintended consequences. I mean, all right, Chelsea weren't great against Salzburg, but if you're Graham Potter, your first week in the job, because had Chelsea had a game last weekend, it would have meant Potter had 1 day with his team before his first game, which didn't that's just been thrown into it, and maybe it has a potential to get you off to the wrong start. Whereas instead, he got 5 uninterrupted days to work with his players. I think that will serve them much better in the long run than having a game straight away. Likewise, Liverpool. I mean, as many people have said, there's one thing Liverpool could do it now, given their recent form. It's basically a bit of a break, Klopp to get them away, get a team going through transition to work on a new approach. He's got that. Same with Eric Ten Hag, almost gets an extra preseason now. And so this could really, I suppose with all these things, as we talk every week, our guides are always the most recent games, whereas this kind of represents almost a kind of a jut in the season in that regard. Yeah, and a couple of shots as well. What a time to be alive. Adrian, jump back in for me.
Just one quick one going back to this game. It was a close game against City, by the way. But yeah, just 2 of 19 home games last season went over 3 goals at Brentford. So it wasn't a high-scoring stadium last year. I know that's last season, and this season's been much more frantic. But yeah, over the long period, they've been tighter, low-scoring games there than these ones that we've seen thus far. But I have a hunch, Sully, you're going to go with both teams to score, because I think we're probably all agreed on
democracy. It's 2 versus 1. I can't do much about that one. That's not even a joint split decision. That's just the way it is. But I understand that. You know what, AC, you can tell us when it's 0-0, which you can back at 15.5 at 90 minutes on Sunday. You can say, I bloody told you so. 1-2 is 8.0, or correct score prices are really competitive at matchbook.com at the moment. All right, both teams to score 1.7 is the play. Not Adrian Clarke's play, but it is the play from the podcast. Tottenham and Hotspur versus Leicester City is the next game. Tottenham coming off that very disappointing 2-0 loss in Lisbon. You can back them at 1.52 in this one. Leicester 7.4. The draw is available at 4.8. Leicester getting a 1.25 start at 1.873 is the total. Slightly shaded towards the over here. Mark O'Hare, in terms of a bet here, are you with Tottenham, are you with Leicester, or what's the general feeling here?
I'm pro Spurs. Very poor in Portugal midweek. Yeah. Defended sloppily in stoppage time, had chances, failed to sort of take the right option. When they did come, they seemed to arrive to Emerson Royale of all people, but they were pretty flat for the most part, and it looked like a game between two teams who were almost playing for a point after starting the campaign with a win. It's almost like both teams felt a draw in that game was a good result, but they switched off later on and paid for it. But I just think Leicester could be the perfect bounce back opponents, really. 1 point on the board, 5 successive defeats, 16 goals conceded. Difficult schedule, but defensively, not for the first time in a while, they've been hopeless, really. The thing with Leicester, though, is the individual talent they have got going forward, and we've talked about it week after week after week. They are excellent in front of goal. They are clinical. They scored twice at Arsenal, twice at Brighton, should have scored twice at Chelsea. It means since the start of last season, they failed to score just twice away from home in the Premier League, which is a remarkably good record for a team who finished outside of the top 6. Big issue, of course, is defensively. They've kept 1 clean sheet away from home in those 22 games, but both teams to score has banked in 19 of those matches, which is crazy numbers, really. 68% of those games have gone over 2.5 goals. All 22 have featured at least 2 goals. So I'm expecting goals here, unsurprisingly, with Leicester involved. I just hope Rodgers goes with Iheanacho and Daka up front again. I thought they combined pretty well at Brighton, considering the defeat, dropping Vardy to the bench. You've got Maddison and Barnes there, who I think have been shining lights, really, in what's been a poor season. Defensively, they're still a little bit all over the place with square pegs in round holes. I know there's a few signings late on in the transfer window, but difficult to see them sort of turning up and shutting out a Spurs team, considering the talent they have going forward. So, yeah, Tottenham, despite not playing particularly well throughout the campaign, tend to get results. 13 wins from 17 at home under Conte. They have been the most consistent and the best performing team, not just in points, but also expected goals behind Liverpool and Man City since Conte arrived. But they are giving chances away, and quite a few chances too. Southampton scored away at Tottenham. Wolves had legitimate opportunities. Fulham forced plenty of problems late on as well. And this game tends to feature goals too. Spurs beat Leicester 3-1 here last season. I think we all probably remember the last gasp win Spurs had at the KP 3-2 in stoppage time as well. So, I'm going to be ballsy here. Normally I'd probably take the safer option of Spurs to win an over 1.5, even Spurs to win an over 2.5 at 2.16, which I think is a very fair play. But for that to land, you need Tottenham to win 3-0, 4-0, something like that, really. And without, unless Leicester are going to contribute. And I think Leicester can contribute, and that's the thing. So we can take a big hike on the Tottenham price to win by just including both teams to score, which brings it into about 3.05 from around Spurs, which are 1.45-ish to win this game, basically doubling the price, which is pretty significant if you bear in mind Leicester do tend to score away from home. They failed to score twice on their travels since last season. So, I'm expecting Spurs to win. A great opportunity for them to get back to winning ways against a poor Leicester team, but wouldn't be too surprised to see the Foxes contribute.
It's a big price, over 2-1. Adrian Clarke, pick it up from there. You like the BTTS angle of this one, especially?
Oh, definitely. You'd have to make Tottenham favourites to win the game as well. So it's a very appealing tip, I think, that from Mark. But both teams to score would be my selection. On the numbers, really, 20 of 22 away games, that's landed for Leicester. So you've got to sort of respect their ability to score on the road. I completely agree with Barnes and Maddison. I think they're great players, and it'd be interesting. I think Daka will definitely keep his place. I don't know whether Rodgers will be bold enough to leave Vardy out again. He's never gone this long, has he, at the start of a season without scoring? Jamie Vardy. He's normally the kind of front man. Early on in the campaign, he's absolutely on fire. So he'll be so frustrated, I think, at what's happening. I watched the Spurs game against Sporting Lisbon. They weren't very good, and the thing that would give me one or two alarms is the fact that Sporting Lisbon very much played a counter-attacking game. They sat in and looked to break, often through Marcus Edwards, who was great in the game. Leicester are a very good counter-attacking team. Now, Rodgers has kind of gradually coached them to become more of a control side, but I always still think that Leicester are at their best when they break on you. And so I think that they've got every chance of scoring in this game because Spurs look very uncomfortable dealing with those transitions. So I'll give Leicester a chance here. I even looked at Leicester on the handicap, but they've been defending so poorly that I'm a little bit scared of doing that. So I think we'll go with a more orthodox both teams to score. Harry Kane, by the way, loves this fixture. He scored 19 goals against Leicester. That's more than he scored against anybody else. I think if he gets 2 in this game, he'll break Alan Shearer's record of the most goals against a single opponent. So a bit of motivation for Harry as well.
Yeah, no, I like that angle. Miguel, you're pro Spurs in this one.
Yeah, actually, from listening to Mark, more so than Adrian, sorry, Adrian, I wonder if I've been a little bit conservative there, because while I agree with Adrian that Leicester are better when they're playing on the counter, and that is a particular challenge for Spurs this season. In fact, it's almost actually become a Jose Mourinho style issue for Antonio Conte in that sense. I don't really trust Leicester to play it this season. I think they're very much, it almost feels like just as they're kind of between cycles in this team, if Rodgers even sees another cycle, they're as a consequence kind of between ideologies. They don't kind of alternate between approaches as easily as they did, which I think can itself be a recipe for disaster if you try and switch from one to the other. And now I'm wondering, is my bet there of Tottenham and over 1.5, 1.7, is that a little bit conservative? Because it's easy to see a game where Leicester just either they try and play on the counter and struggle, or else they open out against Spurs and just are as porous as they have been usually.
Yeah, I think someone like Patson Daka, did he come from Salzburg? He just hasn't really, but like he's some pace.
Yeah.
He's quick.
Surprising, isn't it? He was a very good player there. By the way, one change this weekend, and this is quite a big change for Leicester, is that the new guy will come in, I think, Wout Faes. Obviously, it's a step up for him coming to the Premier League. We don't know how he's going to adjust, but he's a proper centre-half. Wilfred Ndidi, who played there in the last couple of games, he's definitely not a proper centre-half. So on that front, you would imagine Leicester will have a little bit more stability at the back. But yeah, based on the evidence of what we've seen, Tottenham more than have enough quality to carve them open, especially if Mig's right and they come out and look to control the game against Spurs. Yeah, it could be curtains for them. So really, really interesting game. I look forward to sort of watching this.
Yeah, as a compromise, Adrian, I'll take your selection this time, mate. Because Mark, look, if you want a bigger price, you want to pair Tottenham, as Miguel reckons they'll win as well. You can go Tottenham and both teams score, which is 3.05, but we're going to be slightly more conservative and just take both teams to score at 178 at Matchbook at the time of recording. All right, we'll move on to the sunny northeast. Newcastle United take on Bournemouth. The current betting as we have it at matchbook.com. You can back Newcastle at 1.49, Bournemouth at 8.2, the draw available at 4.7. The main handicap line here, Bournemouth are getting a 1.25 goal start to 187, and 2 3/4 is the total, slightly shaded towards the under. Adrian, Bournemouth, they're going to find it tough here, aren't they? Newcastle have been very solid of late.
Yeah, the Eddie Howe derby. It's going to be interesting, isn't it? See how that dynamic works. I think this is it's a long journey for Bournemouth first and foremost, and then it doesn't get much longer, does it, in Premier League terms? And it could be a long journey home for them. Newcastle's record at home is good. They've lost one of their last 13 at St James's Park. It's become a bit of a fortress, hasn't it? Really, I think the fans are certainly enjoying themselves much more. And in that run of 13 games, they've only once conceded more than a goal. So, and that was the 3-3 with Manchester City. The other games, they either had clean sheets or let in one max. So they don't give a lot away. When you think about Bournemouth this season, no one's had fewer shots by quite some distance, actually. I don't know. They've had 34 shots in the Premier League this season. That is 22 fewer than anyone else. It's remarkable. Yeah. Now, a lot of that is because Scott Parker was sort of such a dull coach tactically. And Gary O'Neill will probably be a bit more offensive. We saw that against Forest, didn't we? But he'll also be a bit nervous of opening up too much against Newcastle, with Isak likely to lead the line. I think the word is Sam Maximan and Bruno Guimaraes will come back from injury. They missed the last game, that goalless draw against Palace. So I think if they're back and Isak's leading the line, I think they can basically cause all sorts of problems for a Bournemouth team that are Championship. Really, that they barely scraped out of the Championship. And I think that's their level. So I think I see a comfortable home win here. I think obviously you can't back Newcastle on the nose; they're too short. But yeah, if you fancy them to win with a clean sheet, then the odds ramp up quite significantly. I think 2.42 on Newcastle and BTTS. No, they did of course keep clean sheets against Palace at home and Forest at home as well. So they were looking for a hat trick of those this weekend, and I think they can get it.
Miguel, Delaney are in full agreement here with a home team clean sheet in this one. Bournemouth going to struggle.
Yeah, I don't actually read much into Bournemouth's sudden flow of goals against Notts Forest. I think that had more to do with the situation and also just the way Forest play than and do Bournemouth. I completely agree with Adrian. I think they're Championship quality. In fact, we also saw this week the news that the club were up for sale, which I suppose puts everything into kind of a greater context as regards Scott Parker and where they are as a team. And on the other side of that, I think the one thing you can say for certain about Eddie Howe's Newcastle, amidst all the kind of wider discussions about their own ownership and all that, is that he has created a solid defensive infrastructure there. They're tough to open. And because of that, because of Bournemouth's paucity of quality, I do think a clean sheet is a good bet for this week. I mean, really, I can almost see it just one of those very standard Newcastle, or one of the very standard Premier League 2-0 home wins. But I do think actually it could develop into one of those games where it's kind of a thrashing out of nowhere, and like potentially Newcastle going up to 4 or 5 isn't inconceivable here.
All right, Mark O'Hare, what's your way in here in terms of a bet?
Ugly game this. Newcastle probably haven't got the points their performances have deserved. 4 draws from 6. Fair, beaten at Anfield late on. Only win came on the opening day. Dominated Wolves away. Did the same to Palace as well in the last game. They had 20 shots in the box against Palace, which is really quite impressive. Just weren't clinical enough. But for me, a lot depends on those team news, which Adrian talked about. Bruno Guimaraes and Alan Maximan. Are they fit enough? Are they available? If they are, then absolutely I'll be on board the Newcastle bus here. I know Wilson's injured, but Isak is more than good enough as a replacement, really. But those two are the key cogs, really. Without them, I'm a little bit cold on Newcastle, despite their defensive improvements. Their record under Howe at home, as Adrian touched on, is very, very strong. Only Liverpool and City have beaten them at St James's Park under his tutorship. 7 clean sheets in 17. So all that sort of leads towards Newcastle. And just a bit more on Bournemouth. They're averaging less than 0.3 expected goals per game from open play in the Premier League, which is utterly abysmal. And they're pretty much rock bottom on every possible metric you can find. So it's remarkable to think that they're level on points with Newcastle coming into this game. But football's funny at times. They failed to score in four of six, conceded multiple goals in 4 of 6 since promotion as well. So, I looked at Newcastle to win and under 4.5 goals at around 1.8. I think that's a reasonable lift on the price of Newcastle just to win. They've scored 4 or more Premier League goals 3 times since 2016, Newcastle, that is. I know they're obviously evolving into a much more formidable team than they have been in the past, but they're not normally accustomed to sort of putting teams to the cleaners. And when they did this season, Forest on the opening day, they didn't get over the 3.5 line either. So, home win, but relatively low scoring would be my option. You're muted, Sully.
That'll happen every now and again. Yeah, once a week. Still
happens. 2 years on, it still happens.
Newcastle clean sheet seems to be a consensus there from the first 2 arguments, and I'm quite happy getting odds against Bournemouth not scoring an away a day like this. Yeah, I'm quite happy that 2.1. You can back that. That will come up as a home team clean sheet. Yes, Matchbook.com. All right, early kickoff on Saturday. Wolves against Manchester City. City fresh from the dramatic 2-1 win against Borussia Dortmund. 1.36. You can back the Citizens. Wolves double digits at home, 10.5. The draw available at 5.8. A very popular selection throughout the season being Man City -1.5. That seems to be the line most weeks. 1.98. You can back that. 3 is the total shaded towards the under. Miguel, Delaney, Wolves, they're not a fun watch. But they're solid, and you can just see that there's going to be 2 banks of 4, 2 banks of 4 and a 5, and there's going to be City are going to have to work for this, I think, right?
Well, this is almost your classic kind of immovable object against unstoppable force, and we've got in terms of kind of looking ahead to goals in these games, we really got the 2 extremes. One of the sides where you'd almost always back them to score over 2 goals in a game, and the other, who we spoke about last week, where maybe one of the kind of consistent calls of the season is that Wolves, their games always feature under 2 goals. That said, given City are the better team with basically more weight towards their quality, I think that will naturally tip the balance. I think you're dead right. I think Wolves will make it very difficult, but I can see basically, the sort of game where City are made to really work, but ultimately at the moment, it's just with pretty much every game, there's going to be at least 2 chances for Erling Haaland. He's going to take at least 1. Yeah. So it's why I'll go for a City win, but maybe in terms of goals, more conservative than usual. So I've gone for under 3.5, which is at a pretty nice 2.34.
And Adrian Clarke, we were recording this on Thursday, and we saw it last night against Dortmund. They'll eventually just break it. They figure it out, don't they? Even when Dortmund go ultra defensive, bring on the extra central defender there, and look, even Terzic probably killed himself in a certain way there too. But they figured it out, and that's the thing. This, you wouldn't be panicking if it's 0-all at half time if you're with City with one of these selections.
Yeah, what a surprising game that was, by the way, with so few shots on target for Manchester City. But like you say, found a way. What an amazing goal, wasn't it? From Cancelo, that assist. I mean, I can't even jump as high as Haaland volleyed it in from. I mean, that was just crazy. So yeah, that's why they're such a machine. That's why you won't catch us backing against Manchester City too often this season. That's a spoiler alert. It is the best attack for the best defence, statistically anyway. It's not a fluke either with Wolves. I was looking at the XG against in open play, and it's the 3rd best behind Manchester City and Arsenal. So they really don't give you a lot in general play, Wolves. I'm just in the process of writing a piece for the Premier League on the sort of cornerstone of that strong defensive record, and that's the 2 guys at the back, Kilman and Collins, with Neves in front. Neves had a very good start to the season in a slightly more defensive capacity, and those 3 do have the sort of form to frustrate Manchester City, I think. But ultimately, do they have the tools to hurt them at the other end of the pitch? I don't think so, really. Diego Costa, who knows? I mean, barely seen him, have we, in a few years? Didn't get much football at Atletico, and he's been playing in Brazil. So who knows what kind of shape he's in. City won this one 5-1 at Molineux last season. It won't be that again, I'm pretty sure, be a much closer affair. So yeah, so for me, it'd be another low scoring game. I think Wolves and Manchester City to win and under 3.5 goals is the most obvious pick here. You could go under 4.5, but I think you can probably afford to pinch it a little bit here because of Wolves' solidity at the back.
Terrible sweat though if City are 3-0 up after 80 minutes.
I know.
It's the worst kind of sweat.
The other stat, by the way, is Wolves have only scored last year. Wolves only scored. This is shocking against top half teams. They scored 4 goals at home last season. I mean, when the big guns come to Molineux, they very rarely do anything inside the final third. So, that's a worry for them.
I'm not going to lie, when I saw that Diego Costa thing come up close to transfer deadline day, I presumed it was a different Diego Costa. I said it had to be. And it's, it's not that uncommon a first name and a surname. It had to be different. Here we are.
Looks like a wolf, though, doesn't he? He's got those wolf wolf vibes. I think that he seems a player suited to Wolves. He's certainly got that sort of. You wouldn't want to run into him on a dark alley, would you?
Before I go to you, Mark, Miguel, jump back in. Sorry.
Yeah, just before Mark comes in, like Lage is an interesting one in that way. I mean, I remember did a piece in this about a year or two ago about the Portuguese school. And because especially given Wolves are signing so many players in Portugal. Like about 10 years ago, Mourinho typified a very specific Portuguese style, which is very kind of reactive football, low block, high defensive structure, counter-attacking. That has evolved, and I think Lage is genuinely a kind of an indication of that evolution. But yet, it's still his approach. It's amazing. It almost kind of perfectly articulates what we've seen from Portugal international teams for 30 years, which is basically a lot of possession and lots of creativity, but without much end product. And like, because so many Portuguese teams, remember, that have so many number 10s, so many players good on the ball, but then in terms of actually scoring, it was always such a difficulty. Which is why until Ronaldo came along, a striker as relatively limited as Pauleta was their finisher. And it's almost kind of like this is completely distilled in how Lage plays football. Because in terms of how they move the ball, Wolves can be kind of, it can be pretty. It just goes nowhere.
Pauleta, you're going back there. That's Helder Costa, that was another guy up there. And
and Postigas.
Oh, there was some great guys who would play 20 internationals, not get one goal. Brilliant. Mark O'Hare, I don't know if you've much to add on what the guy said there, but you're being a small bit more conservative and taking under 4.5, because as you said, it can just get messy with City sometimes if they get that goal early.
Yeah, I'm never comfortable with City in any game, sort of backing below sort of 3.5 goals, even against Wolves. And I've kind of flitted between a couple of different angles here. City to win to 0, which I've ruled out because Kyle Walker is missing, and looking the way City have defended recently, it's left me a little bit concerned. You look at the games against Aston Villa, Newcastle, away from home. They have been caught out a couple of times in transitions, and that's why at Wolves, they have been trying to sort of move towards and transition towards a new system, a new style. That resulted in Conor Cody leaving the club, but I just can see them going back to their sort of tried and trusted old ways of counter-attacking in the low block here. So you look at their record, Adrian sort of touched on it really, but they picked up 1 point at home to the Big Six last season, but 4 of their 5 defeats were 1-0, and there was a 0-0 as well. The 5-1 against City came in May when they're pretty much on the beach and when exactly kind of the hearts weren't really in it really. But 5 of those matches featured 1 goal maximum really. So they went away to Spurs. I thought they played pretty well between both boxes, but things fell down in the final third and they lost 1-0. So you would expect something similar to occur here, but just disappointed really for them that Sasa Kalashnic, the signing from Stuttgart, was injured on his debut, because he had real high hopes of being a big hit in the Premier League, and that's a massive blow. So they've got a lot of creative players, a lot of players with pace and ability. So potentially this kind of game might suit them, really, being able to play on the counter-attack and hit City in those transitions and counter-attacks. So I didn't think City were very good at all against Dortmund. It was a bang average performance, and they looked, I wouldn't say clueless, but kind of directionless for large parts of that game and how to break down the defence. And I kind of watched Haaland for quite a long time, and he just had no space whatsoever. There was players all around him the whole second half. So it was remarkable that he managed to pull out that goal really at that particular time. So Yeah, I mean, City and under 3.5 is the value play really, but just because I know what City are like and they do have that ability to cut loose, I'm just happy to get the bigger line onside at a reasonable price. But I did consider backing under 3 goals as well as an alternative. But zero, you're basically relying on 0 to 2 goals for a payout, and that's even less enjoyable than just backing City under 3.5. So yeah, happy for you to go with the boys.
No, man, I'll go with you on this one. I'm with you here because if I'm having a bet, I'm just not. I've just been burned with that City 3.5 one before, and I just don't want to be sweating it. 1.75, you can back City to win, and under 4.5, and those markets are exceptionally well priced at Matchbook. If you compare them, they're kind of a bet builderish market. If you compare them even to the best sports books, they're better priced as well. Let's do a very quick recap of what we have so far. Brentford, Arsenal, both teams score 1.7. Tottenham, Leicester, the exact same selection, both teams score 178, and Newcastle clean sheet odds against 2.1, and City to beat Wolves at under 4.5 total goals. You got a full recap of those selections Thursday afternoon on Matchbook Insights. Also on Matchbook Insights, you can check out details of our sign-up offer. That's in the top right of the screen when you're on Matchbook Insights. Insights.matchbook.com. Mark O'Hare's already got his selections up from Europe, and Adrian Clarke will as well. We'll be on with extra Premier League selections as well. All right, we move on to the EFL section of the show. Mark O'Hare, you're going to League 2 first. Northampton, 1.9 to beat Rochdale. What's the case? I see Adrian Clarke nodding away, so that's always a good
it's a good price. It's a good price. That's why Mark's picked it.
Yeah, Northampton, funny team. A team that never really tend to show up superbly well on kind of the data. They're a bit of a grinding kind of team, but they tend to get the job done, and they're coming into this game with back-to-back wins, aided by sort of 2 defensive gaffes by Wimbledon in midweek, but they're up to 5th, 5 wins from 8, and John Brady's been talking up his players after the midweek performance. They're back at 6 fields. They've had a lot of injuries so far this season, but they're starting to clear up, and they're able to field quite close to their best 11 now. And the difference maker really is Sam Hoskins up front as well. He's possibly too good for the 4th tier, and he just gives them the cutting edge that they need really. Because but at home, their record under Brady in League 2 is superb really. A 59% win rate going back to the beginning of last season, which if turned into implied betting odds would give you 1.7. Now that's obviously quite a coarse way of trying to work out the correct odds that Northampton should be, but it gives you an idea of what kind of price they could be. But that improves really when Northampton host bottom half teams under Brady. They've won 10, drawn 2, and lost twice, which is an excellent return really. And here they're hosting Rochdale, rock bottom of the Football League, turned over 1-0 at home by league leaders Leyton Orient in midweek, and had a stoppage time penalty saved. That was one of only 2 shots on target in the game, with their goalkeeper Richard O'Donnell the best player in that particular match. They lost a shot count 14-7. It was their 6th defeat in 8 winless games so far this season. They failed to score in 5 of them, and they've lost 15 of 27 away since returning to the 4th tier as well. So Bentley's gone in there to try and turn things around, but this is a really difficult game for them, I think. And the Northampton, just too big a price for me at 1.9. I make them much more closer to about 1.75. So I'll see where the price goes before Saturday.
All right. Good case made. Adrian Clarke, moving back to the Championship. Millwall and Blackpool, both teams only averaging a goal each through 9 games of the season. Under 2.5, 1.81. So another 1-1 draw, you'd be quite happy with.
Exactly. Yeah. I looked at BTTS now, but then the 1-1 always trips you up on those, doesn't it? So yeah, I've gone with under 2.5. A good friend of mine was at Millwall the other night when they played Queen's Park Rangers, said they were toothless. It was really, really poor, particularly in an attacking sense. And that's kind of been the story this season for them. Only 3 goals in open play since the start of the campaign for Millwall. So they're struggling for that fluency, and Blackpool aren't high scorers either. You look at the numbers, 7 of 9 Millwall games have gone under 2.5 so far. 6 of 9 Blackpool games have gone under 2.5, and both teams to score has only landed in 2 of 9 for both teams. So there's a very strong likelihood, based on what we've seen so far, that this is going to be a fairly tepid affair. Chuck in the fact that Blackpool will be smarting from a bad loss at Rotherham midweek, 3-0. I think it'll be a case of let's go back to basics. They're up against another abrasive team that's similar to Rotherham, strong in the air. So they're going to have to double down and be much better than they were on Tuesday night, and I think they will do. But yeah, I'm not going to call who's going to win it, but under 2.5 looks fair to me at 1.81.
Keep going. Exeter to beat Burton and over 1.5 total goals in League One. 1.9.
Yeah, I mean, Burton are shocking, like really bad. They've got a new manager, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, sort of fell on his sword, resigned. Dino Marmaria has taken over, and basically he stuck his flag in the centre circle and said, "I'm the permanent boss." The club itself have not announced it. Basically, they made him caretaker, but he said, "No, I'm not doing the caretaker thing. I'm the manager, all right." But there's no announcement, so I don't know what's going on. All I do know is that they've been.
He's negotiated the contract for himself as well. That's
They've conceded 13 in 4 away games, which tells you that they are not good travellers. They've yet to concede less than 2 in a match on the road this season, and they're up against Exeter, who I think are one of the best home teams around in Leagues 1 and 2. Very strong last season at home. And they've got 3 wins from 4. At League One level so far this season. And what I like about Exeter is that they've got depth up front. You've got Nombe and Brown up front at the moment who are doing great, but that means Matt Jay, who's scored a lot of goals for them, is on the bench, as is Jay Stansfield, who started the season with Fulham and played in the Premier League just a few weeks ago. He's there on loan at the moment. So they've got real quality in the forward ranks. And I just think they'll have too much for a Burton team that don't know how to play away from home and don't even know if they've got a proper manager. So Exeter and over 1.5, just taking out the 1-0 win is my pick, and that's 1.9.
All right. Miguel Delaney, Mark O'Hare tipped up Barcelona -1.5 against Cadiz last weekend. They're at home to Elche this weekend. It will not surprise you. They're 1.11 to win the game, but you fancy them to win and win handedly. And the bet is Barcelona to win and over 3.5 total goals. I don't presume you're thinking that Elche will contribute too much here.
No, given where they are on the table, given the defensive record, which is currently one of the worst in La Liga with 13 conceded, and just how easy they are to get at. I took Mark's bet last week, and in this one would almost be so confident with Barca that nearly predict a score, which is 4-1 to 5-1, which has almost been kind of the pattern of their season so far. I was at their game on Tuesday night against Bayern, and I mean that articulated in a way that La Liga games against kind of the bottom half couldn't. That they are still a work in progress, which is probably why they've been a little bit more porous at the back than you might expect. Kunde really struggled against Alphonso Davies the other night. Now, obviously, Elche don't have anyone of that quality, but given the way Barca play, and there can be that slight abandon when they get going as well. They can be open, so it's why I nearly go for a 4-1 game. But yeah, but certainly, I think over 4, which is like quite a high 2.36, is a safe enough bet.
Yeah, and
Barca win, obviously.
Yeah, I got that one. That was safe enough there. I think if you wanted to back Barca and their team total, it's actually 2.5, but it's 1.54. Short, but it's one of those ones that you could throw in an ACA with a couple of other team totals. Mark O'Hare, your first selection here, I'm not going to lie, right? So we set up these banners.
This isn't a real game. This isn't a real game.
It gets worse, Adrian, right? So for those on the podcast, the real names of these teams are Oddsball Club versus Hamburg Kammerett 10. And I said to Dan, the producer, I didn't know Mark was doing the J League or the K League. I thought, well, this is a European section, not an Asian section. This is the Norwegian Elite Syrian. Adrian, Miguel, honestly, did you know that?
I had heard of Odd, yeah. I think I played as them as in the Tipper League in FIFA 2003 or something like that.
Yeah.
That was always the way you learned these names. Computer games, really computer games. The Subutio scoreboard, or when you'd buy a Subutio team, it'll have loads of. You'd buy like I don't know Blackpool or something the Netherlands in Subutio, and have a list of other teams that they were really like Blackpool, Volendam. That's how you expanded your.
This is serious nostalgia. Poletto, Subutio. This is serious nostalgia. Anyway, Mark, sorry, it doesn't make any difference. We're going to back it anyway. But what's the story here? Because the rest of us haven't got a clue. That's fair enough.
Sure. We're 3/4 of the way through the top flight in Norway. Goals, it's traditionally a high-scoring league anyhow, and 3.15 goals per game this year. 64% have gone overs, 40% have gone over 3.5 goals, and both teams scoring in 62% of the overall game. So high-scoring league. We're getting over 2.5 goals here at 1.8. Just too big in my book. Odd are in mid-table. No man's land. They're going nowhere really, but playing without pressure at home. So would expect them to put on a decent show. Playing a newly promoted team in Hamcam, who are literally a place above the relegation playoff place. So they're gunning for points here. This is kind of heavily favoured by the numbers and the data, really, because odds games are averaging 2.82 expected goals. At home, that rises to 3.14. And they've seen overs in 8 of 11 at home. They've scored 9 of 11 at home. They've scored multiple goals in 7 of those 11 and kept just 2 clean sheets as well. But if you actually go back a little bit further, odds home games have been just an overs paradise, really. 15 of the last 18 have gone over 2.5 goals, and there's been over 3.5 goals in 10 of those 18 as well. So and if you look at the just goals per game, it's pretty much bang in line with their expected goals figures as well. Hamcam have been a little bit more conservative as a newly promoted team, but just pretty remarkable, really, that all 10 of their away matches so far this season since promotion have seen both teams score. And there's been an average of 2.8 goals per game. So just a ridiculous record in terms of BTTS. And I think if we're going to get another BTTS winner here, which I think we will do, it's not asking a huge amount more just to get a third goal. As I say, the matches in the Norwegian top flight tend to be quite expansive and high scoring. If you turn that sort of over 2.5 goals hit rate for the league at 64% into betting odds, it'd be a lot shorter than 1.8. And I think we've got a nice sort of recipe here for two teams who can contribute on the score sheet. So 1.8 on over 2.5 goals. You don't see it too often in Norway. So happy to be involved there.
All right. I don't know how you find the time, mate. I genuinely don't. It's just beyond the realm of possibility. You've got a newborn as well in the last few months. It's a credit to you, Mark. It's an absolute credit. All right, we move on. Actually, Mark, I stay with you. League On last weekend as well. One of the few games that actually went ahead that we covered, Angers and Montpellier over 2.5. That came up again. And another one here, Rennes against Monaco.
Have I put that in? Is that my nap or is that my...
I thought you have it in just as your main one. Your best bet also comes in League On, and that's something else. It's not a goal. Yeah.
I'll go with Rams Monaco quickly as just an AOB, but yeah, we know about France and goals so far this season. Monaco started to settle again after sort of being knocked out of the Champions League qualifiers. Have a game against Ferencváros on Thursday night, so they might not be at 100%, but they've been very, very good, particularly away from home under Philippe Clement. 7 wins, 4 draws, and 2 defeats on the road, averaging 1.62 goals. Their 7 Ligue 1 matches so far this season are averaging 3.1 non-penalty expected goals and a massive 19.5 shots on the box, which is quite comfortably the most in the division. It just kind of shows how kind of helter-skelter and end-to-end their matches tend to be. And they're playing a Rams team who, at home under Oscar Garcia, are pretty much a front foot team. They scored in 16 of 22 at home under his tutorship. Just kept 6 clean sheets in that same sample though as well. This season alone, they've seen BTTS in 6 of 7. They yet to keep a clean sheet, but they have scored against Lens, Lyon, and Marseille. So I don't see any reason why they can't score against a Monaco team who've seen both teams scoring in 6 of their 7 and keeping just the 1 clean sheet themselves. So, I think both teams to score again is a very big runner. Just to ask for a third goal isn't asking a huge amount with Monaco involved. So 1.85 and over 2.5 goals feels like a nice price.
Yeah, absolutely does. Okay. Like I said, insights.matchbook.com for full recap of those. We're going to best bets. Miguel Delaney, Forest Fulham over 2 3/4. Good odds against there. Nice price, 2.18.
Yeah, it was this or Everton West Ham at under 2.5, given 2 defensively. But I thought I'd go with optimism, with goals, with openness, and basically how we mentioned it earlier as regards Bournemouth. Just, with any Forest game now, I think we're at the point where, given the way Cooper plays, which I would generally admire, but also just given the huge turnover in that squad, I think it's going to lead to a series of chaotic matches. And Fulham have been they've been active themselves this season. They're willing to have a go, and so it's why I think this is and given also it's a likely bottom half fixture between 2 bottom half sides, if maybe not necessarily a relegation battle in that regard, given how solid Fulham have been. I think it's going to be a back and forth, and goals look likely.
You're going for 5 best bets in a row, Miguel, so no pressure.
Yeah.
I went to this game. Went to that game last year, and Fulham smashed Forest. Obviously both teams ended up going up, but I can see goals in that one. Yeah, for sure, both teams scoring.
Yeah, you might have to wait till the second half for this one, Miguel. Adrian Clarke, your best bet: Fleetwood against Charlton, both teams to score 1.8.
Yeah, just playing the numbers game here, really.
Okay.
If you look at both teams to score so far this season, Charlton are the team that it's happened to most, 6 of 8. And the team that it's happened to second most often is Fleetwood, 5 from 8. Both teams have got good attacks. Fleetwood is improving. With Charlton, I think you're always going to get both teams to score a landing more often than not, because Ben Garner plays a really open brand of sort of possession football that's very attack-minded. It's about what they do with the ball, and they're not quite as sturdy or resolute when they lose it. And I think that might open the door for Fleetwood here. Charlton have got some good forwards. Blackett Taylor, you've got a young kid, Miles Leaburn, the son of Carl Leaburn. Raksaki on loan from Palace, a good player. Jack Payne, Jaden Stockley. They've got players that can score goals, Charlton, and they've only kept 1 clean sheet, which sort of backs up what I've just said there. Fleetwood are probably a better defensive team than Charlton, but under Scott Brown. But yeah, they're not exactly watertight. They're not one of the stronger squads in the division, and I think they might find it hard to keep a shutout against the Addicts. They've got some good forwards as well. Paddy Lane, Callum Morton, Carlos Mendes Gomez on loan from Luton as well. So yeah, I can see both teams scoring here. Clean sheets, neither side strong point either.
Mark O'Hare, you already tipped your hat there. We're dipping back into League On for this one. It's very early days in the league, but there's 7 games in, and Lens, there's 11 points, I think, separating these sides. Lens away at Nantes, and you're backing them in the Asian handicap, so obviously look, draw no bet essentially at 1.73. Are you surprised that they're 2.3 to win the game? Is it just kind of a market play here for you? You probably would have had them closer to evens, I'm guessing.
Yeah, almost a closing line guarantee here. There's absolutely no way Lens go off a 0 ball at 1.73 come Sunday. I'll tell you that now. So just getting in there, because the only thing that could disrupt things is their head coach, Frank Hayes, has been, in some places installed as the favourite for the vacant managerial role at Brighton. And, Brighton are a very, very smart club. They know, if you look at the list of potential candidates they're looking at, they're all similar sort of profile to Lens' head coach, who guided them up from promotion, guided them up from League Two to the top flight in France, and has put out consecutive 7th-place finishes. This time around, they've won 5 of 7 unbeaten games to start the season, so sitting just behind PSG and Marseille. They've already thrashed Monaco away. They've beaten Rennes as well. They've racked up 16 goals in those 7 games. Only PSG are generating a higher XG average in Ligue 1. And actually, on a per-game basis, Lens have been 0.81 XG better than their opposition, which is saying something. They've been very, very, very good. Firing in the 4th most shots from inside the penalty area. And what's kind of key to this particular selection is they go into a Nantes team who are playing in Europe this season for the first time in around 20 years, having won the French Cup last year. They are a famous French club, but they've had a tough time over the last 2 decades or so. But on Thursday night, they're away in Azerbaijan, and they're not accustomed to quick turnarounds, let alone, an 8-hour flight, whatever it might be, back from Azerbaijan ahead of a Sunday match. So that's bound to have an effect on them. They might make changes, they might not. Either way, there's going to be some weary and fatigued legs there. So far this season, they've won just once in 7 league matches. They've kept 1 clean sheet, and they're winless, having lost 3 or 4 games against the current top half in the table, and they're posting a negative XG process so far. So Lens, definitely one of the better teams in France so far this season, and as long as Frank Hayes stays in situ, I expect them to be a top 16 this season. Nantes will be anything but. Happy to get the away team on side with a draw also in our side as well.
Go from there.
That's usually another nice trend, isn't it, actually? Usually mid-table clubs from the major leagues that are in Europe for kind of a rare occasion, and how they often struggle the weekend afterwards. It's probably something we're looking into, actually.
Yeah, but obviously the bigger clubs will probably rest players for those kind of games. But
and they've got the squad depth as well. That's usually the adaptation, really, that they're not used to kind of the Sunday, Thursday.
Yeah. And as we found out during the Euros, Azerbaijan, tough trip back.
Pretty brutal. I mean, not spot far west of northwest France. So, it's a long old journey. Probably couldn't get further for them to travel. So, tough times.
All right. We're off next week, as we preluded to there earlier. There's an international break, but I'll tell you, the weekend after, we got the Manchester Derby and the Northern London Derby, and there's some tasty fixtures coming up. My thanks to Adrian, Miguel, Mark. Enjoy the week off, gentlemen. We will chat to you all soon. Don't forget insights.matchbook.com to find a full recap of the selections. Also details of the sign-up offer there. If you're watching us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. Click the subscribe button, or if you're listening to us on your podcast, please leave us a lovely review. It does make us smile. Best luck with your weekend bets. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Until then, goodbye for now.